All right. Headline: Nexon and Square canceled the Final Fantasy XI R mobile MMO, citing an insufficient level of creative differences. All right, so last fall we poked around trying to figure out what happened to the Final Fantasy XI Remake. I remember that article, the mobile game that was originally announced in 2015 as a Square and Nexon project. As Elliot noted at that time, there wasn't a whole lot to report, as the companies had been pretty quiet about it, apart from the mentions in Nexon's investor reports that suggested it was still on deck, plus some accidental art uploads. And we had done, reports on those various little leaks, if you could even call them that, the investor reports and the art uploads that went in that job outing, looking for new hired for work. There were some pictures of Final Fantasy XI mobile that seemed to suggest like, hey, we're looking for more people to maybe work on this project. Now it appears it's over before it got anywhere, as Japanese game site Social Media Game Info via Kotaku. Oh my god, hang on guys. We want to get to all the sources here. Notice that Nexon canceled the project entirely. It was rumored back at the end of the year. Yep, we saw this, and you might have noticed that the game had vanished from Nexon's pipeline in the February reports. I actually had not. During the actual investor call itself, the transcripts of which are now online, the company admitted the game was canceled because it hadn't met quality standards for the franchise. Here's Nexon CEO Owen Mahoney. Nexon and Square Enix have made the mutual decision that our work on Final Fantasy was not showing the level of creative differentiation that we think our players expect from the Final Fantasy franchise. So rather than releasing a game that did not break new creative ground, we have agreed to halt the project and redeploy our creative teams on the other projects. We think this reflects us taking a very hard look at every project we do and focusing on the things that we believe in, which includes in large part Nexon's own intellectual property, which we can get the core of the fun, and sometimes you're not able to get there. I could classify our relationship with Square Enix as enormously respectful. I have huge respect for their creative teams. We worked very closely together, but we made the decision to protect the value of their IP and to focus our resources on what we think were higher and better uses. And to open up those articles, Social Game Info, we can certainly translate, but I don't have the plugin translated right now. But I think they said via Kotaku, so I'm assuming Kotaku then reported on that. It's all the same information. I've loaded up a few of these articles. They're all basically a couple paragraphs that mostly hone in on that detail. Did not meet the quality standard expected by fans in the Final Fantasy series from a creative perspective. Guys, what do we think about that? So, we've said before on the channel, in videos about Final Fantasy XI Mobile, in the lack of news that we were seeing, one of the most interesting points of reference is how Final Fantasy XI Mobile was discussed, albeit briefly in a little bit, before the announcement of Diablo Immortal, the mobile Diablo game that famously ruined a BlizzCon, and afterwards. Because before was when Final Fantasy XI Mobile was announced, quietly, behind the scenes, just kind of, Square Enix and Nexon saying like, hey, this is coming out, but with some really cool pictures. Then Diablo Immortal came out, and we basically never heard anything again. Now, Nexon went through a number of significant in-house issues. They restructured their whole business. I think they might have been sold and bought. I don't remember all the details, but a lot of problems internally that would have caused some struggle and strife with their general development pipeline and performance. Having said that, it was weird to see this huge, big cooperative project with Square Enix never get mentioned for years and years. And I wonder, now seeing that they decided not to continue based on creative differences, concerns that, I shouldn't say creative differences. Did they use those words, or did they just say concern that they couldn't meet the quality expected? Creative differentiation. So Nexon's wording is suggesting that they didn't think that their project was special enough to make a splash in the scene, which we were talking about this last stream. Mobile MMOs aren't exactly a new space anymore. There's a ton of games out there, many of which are quite pretty. I'm not sure if they're fantastic, but they're certainly addictive. Black Desert Mobile, one of the Lineage mobile games, very impressive. Gotta keep killing these mendicants. And it would have been tough for Final Fantasy XI to kind of break in there without just the Final Fantasy XI name, which helps, but isn't even that huge anymore from a mobile's perspective with some of the other, like Brave Exuvias and everything else. To kind of change the game, as it were. You'd pull in fans, but you could also drive those away if it wasn't good enough. But I'm also, that's just from the perspective of literally what we're reading. I suspect, based on the fact that it was a mutual decision, and I think Nexon is struggling. They're trying to find those projects that would make them a lot of money. I think Nexon wanted to turn Final Fantasy XI into something, Final Fantasy XI Mobile, into something that would have infuriated fans of the franchise, both Final Fantasy XI fans and Final Fantasy fans in general. Namely, a cash grab or something to really suck dry those wallets. And I think Square Enix finally said, we're not doing it. The brand can't take a hit like that, and it certainly wouldn't provide enough money to make up for the hurt to the brand. But I swear I saw in some of the wording earlier. I'm trying to find that article. Mobile canceled. Was it Destructoid? I don't even remember. Yeah, so I just keep seeing the phrasing didn't meet quality standards as expected by fans of the series. And that's where that sounds to me like Final Fantasy XI as a brand being protected by Square Enix. I think Square Enix saw that this wasn't going to be what players wanted and backed off. Which I think is the right move. Now, a lot of people are wondering, does that mean that Square Enix is putting more money into a remake, a remaster, more Final Fantasy XI retail work? I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't think anything I've seen, other than the fact that Final Fantasy XI as a name still has some respect in the Square Enix household, which it should. I mean, it's still making them tons of money. But I was worried that they were just basically at this point like, whatever, as much money as we can possibly make from it. Put out the mobile game, see what comes of it, whatever hurt does to the brand, like, it'll be fine. It's good to see that they backed away from that. I don't know if we can look beyond that to, like, they're definitely working on other projects, other forms of Final Fantasy XI, like bringing it back. The only positive we can take is that they definitely still have respect and appreciation for the fans, and don't want to see the negative fallout that a bad Final Fantasy XI named mobile game could have on even Final Fantasy XI retail, and certainly the impression that the game leaves in our minds and hearts here. But I do want to read, because we didn't get a chance to talk to them, Hayden's thoughts in the article that he had thrown up, which, let me see if I can find that article. So this was the Kotaku article. But Hayden says, the first comment sums up my feelings. I'm conflicted because I loved Final Fantasy XI back in the day and wasted many months during college playing it. So I would jump at a chance to play it again on mobile. On the other hand, sometimes things are better left as fond memories. I agree. I think we've seen that in some ways on Eden. And certainly in, World of Warcraft Classic, some of the things that have come out of that, just like the experience can never truly be exactly the same. That doesn't have to be bad. But you got to be careful, because in many ways you can ruin what you loved most about the experience by trying to revisit it. Mog said, oh god, it's scroll down, hang on. My feelings are a bit more clear. Fuck the mobile version. I wish he was here to have said that himself. But yeah, he was never a fan. We've talked at length about what my hopes were. I was hoping that the mobile version was really just a gateway into a remaster that was, yes, through the Unreal Engine 4 or something similar, playable on mobile, but also playable on PC, and it was just a more all-encompassing experience. But we always knew that was a bit of a pipe dream, likely not gonna come to fruition, but still sad to see it not happen. Let me see some of your thoughts, guys. Iron Rocks, I'm not surprised, but I'm still disappointed. Durgan, maybe SC got wise and realized working with Nexon is a bad idea. It certainly sounds like that. Kutetsu Steel, I feel bad for the devs that were working on that. Imagine working on a project for so long it never gets to come out. Yeah, and I mean, I've certainly, in my own career, I've had situations where projects that are kind of long-winded end up not really being released. But 5 years is a long time. We have to hope, for their sakes, that we have to hope that they weren't really putting a lot of time into it. That maybe they had at one point, and then they'd moved on to other things. But it's hard to know. It's hard to know how much was out there. ZNXP stinks that the hope for mobile version is gone, but it's good that the company isn't doing it. Yeah, Nexon certainly has a lot of red flags, for sure. So Shark, it sounds like the translation of the game to a mobile platform compromised the look of the character models in some way. It could be a visual reflection that Square Enix purely wasn't happy with how it was coming out. I certainly read that as more of they weren't happy structurally, fundamentally with how the game flowed and played, but it could be anything. Ruber, to me, Nexon wanted to make it more of a cash grab, but SC didn't want it to be that way. They didn't see eye to eye, so they canned it. That's certainly how I'm reading it, but it is a lot of, honestly, it's translations of translation, so it's a little bit dicey. Easy to misread something. Where is this darn Humaju? Haha! Darn it. I didn't get off the fast blade sneak attack, whatever. Dragon Eyes, I never played Final Fantasy 11, but I always wanted to try. When I heard the news of the mobile version, I thought perfect time to start, and then I was not able to wait and start on PC not long ago. Lucky for me, I did not wait. See, that's awesome. I mean, just having the name of the game out there is bringing in new players. So in that way, Final Fantasy 11 mobile was at least a little bit positive. Awesome to see you're playing, dude. Iron Rocks, no, Nexon wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, Rebirth. Yeah. Kutetsu Steel just released classic Final Fantasy 11 on PC, PS4, and mobile devices. I would love to see it. I really thought that's where we were going. I don't know, though. I don't know if in Japan or Korea, where Nexon is located, if they had a Final Fantasy test group play whatever test build that Nexon made, and it sucked hard because it was probably a cash grab. I mean, eventually, I'm definitely reading into it as like, Square Enix finally got their hands on things, and they were like, look, the fans are going to hate this. Even if it makes us a ton of money, there's just going to be an outcry, and I don't think the money's worth it. Hit the damn mendicant. Eurus McFinnigan, in my opinion, Nexon knows two things: how to produce a decent game and kill it with pay to win. Zyra, thank you so much for the follow. I don't know if I said that back when you initially followed. Appreciate it. Welcome, welcome. Booty and Sanaflex, closest experience to Final Fantasy 11 on mobile is one I've been playing called Warhammer Odyssey. How's that? I've always been curious about finding a good mobile MMO, so to just like work through every day. I have never really managed to do it. So, guys, what do you think? I mean, is this overall good news for Final Fantasy 11, Square Enix as a company? I'm pretty excited by this news. I know this is bad news. In theory, it's, you know, a Final Fantasy 11 title not releasing, which is hard to not be upset about that. But this goes to show, my biggest takeaway from this is that Square Enix still, at some level, cares about the Final Fantasy 11 brand and what we fans and players think about it. And they don't want to sully that for a quick cash grab win, which is a difficult perspective for gaming companies to have these days, because mobile is such a moneymaker, and And Square Enix has certainly learned that through their own releases. So it's good to see that clearer heads prevailed and they canceled the project. Now, I'll be curious to find out if this has anything to do with the 20th anniversary release of, exciting news there. Like, is there going to be... Is part of their decision to cut Nexon and the Final Fantasy XI mobile project is because simultaneously they're working on this 20th anniversary release? And they're like, look, we can't have a crappy Final Fantasy XI game coming out at the same time we're trying to do a big thing for the brand and the game itself. So, like, we're sorry you're done. I don't know. We still don't really know what's going on with that. But I'm overall taking it as positive news. I think it's a good thing. I was always hopeful for what that game might be, but they were kind of pipe dream hopes. It would have been pretty hard for them to meet my biggest expectations. It was much more likely that it would have fallen short and been a bummer. I think we might have some competition, guys, and I'll be honest. If this thing pops, I'm not in the mental space of focus to, like, actually win the pop. He looks so intense. His Tower is like ready to throw down. I swear this guy always pops in the back corner too.